Good Wednesday to you, everybody in Com 710. Welcome to week boom 10. You made it. You are over the hump, as it were, that is midway through the semester. And now we're coming around the back corner to the final stretch. But before we get this video going, let's get this going correctly. The last of the coffee for today. Because although I do enjoy our class and other things that I work on, I do also like to get my sleep. I need my rest. Speaking of which, I hope you had a restful spring break. Got a little chance away from the work. Welcome back. Excuse me. It's allergy season for me, so if I'm kind of that's why. All right, week 10. So here's what we have going, and here's what you can expect. First things first, I have graded and very thoroughly gone through all of your research paper parts 1. Okay, if you have any questions about any of my comments, please do not hesitate to reach out and get a hold of me. And I'll be happy to spend some time with you. However, let me check the calendar here. Not this week, not the next week, but starting of the week, Monday, the 31st, I'm going to be out of the office because I'm going to be out of the country. I think I may have mentioned in some of my videos, or some of you that have, known me and worked with me before, I still do a lot of global communication consulting and work, and that takes me abroad for my travels. And I will be again out and about I'll be out of the office and really incommunicado from Monday, March 31st until Monday, April 7th. I'll post all of the stuff for the week in advance, so you'll have things to work on. There's really not much for you to work on. You'll have your third presentation assignment. I'll talk about the second one here in just a second. And then you should continue working on your research papers. But back to part number 1. If you have any questions about my remarks, or your score, or where you're going, or how do you improve, contact me during this week and at the very latest before Friday of the next week, because although I'll have the ability for most of that time to check my email, I will not be getting online. I sometimes travel and work in parts of the world where it's to my advantage. How can I put this? Not to be known that I'm there or when I'm there. And all you have to do is Google my name with country names like Iraq or Syria, wink, and you'll see what I mean. So I tend to go quiet when I go into these places. It's just habit, okay? And, I'll set my email to let you know that I'm going to be out. So I don't know if I can set it in Canvas, though. All right. But you'll have plenty to work on, and you really are not going to need me. All right. But if you do, send me an email. And I think except for 1 or 2 days, I'll be able to check my email. My email I can check securely. When I get on Canvas, Canvas is not owned by Regent University. Canvas is its other company, and there are a lot of people that come in and out of the system. There are people that can view my account, what I'm doing, your account, and what you're doing, and they know when I come in and where I am when I come in. So to keep where I am and when I'm there out of the digital public eye, I don't go on those sites and sources. All right. Maybe overly cautious, but when you're working abroad in distressed parts of the world, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or in some instances, your life. All right. But that being said, So if you have questions, please get in touch with me before then. Okay. For this week, I've got for you a series of articles. This week, we are going to take a look at, we've talked a lot about international communication and, how it's defined and what are some of the regulatory issues and what are some of the ethics issues and yeah. And then I had you look at some of my stuff and to see, how it actually plays out amongst peoples of the world. We're going to continue with that theme, how it plays out. And we're going to take a look now, and throughout the rest of the course, we'll be looking more and more at international communications as it pertains to evangelization. And we are going to look this week at how sometimes that doesn't go so well. Okay, specifically, we're going to be looking at prosperity gospel and prosperity gospel preachers in parts of the world. Notably, we're going to be looking at those who practice and are all over the place, really, on the continent of Africa. And within that context, that is, of those who preach the prosperity gospel, we're going to be looking at some specific preachers. Now, I always preface this discussion material with this little caveat. None of the articles that I've assigned to you, given to you this week, and they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and in the syllabus, by the way, it says, we've got a chapter from one of your texts. We're just going to hold on that. Okay, there's enough reading here with 5 articles. That none of them are meant to single out any particular preacher or evangelist, because there are a couple of articles in there about Joel Osteen, and this is by no means, meant to pick on Pastor Osteen or his ministry. I mean, I have my thoughts on it, but that is irrelevant. My thoughts are irrelevant to what we're doing here in the class. I'm simply presenting you with the material that some commentators and scholars have pulled together concerning Joel Osteen and his ministry. And then, as good scholars, as developing communication researchers and scholars, I'm leaving it up to you. In fact, I have a question in your discussion questions about whether one of the articles that you're going to read is objective in its treatment of Mr. Osteen. I leave it up to you to make the decision as to whether the evidence speaks to the conclusions drawn by the authors that you'll read or not. Okay? So, nobody, at least from my side of the process, has a bone to pick with any particular pastor. In this case, Joel Osteen. He just happens to come up a lot within the context of this topic, and that is prosperity gospel. Okay? And, this goes sort of hand in hand with questions about cultural imperialism and this sort of thing. So we're going to, we'll continue in that. And I think you'll find these readings really engaging. I was reading through the articles again last night and going, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's really interesting. Okay. And then of course you've got some discussion questions. Okay. Finally, you have your second class presentation due on March 24th, and that's this coming Monday. So make sure that you see to that if you haven't done so already. And speaking of which, you have or you haven't done throughout this week, and I usually get it all done in spring break, but this particular break, spring break for you, not for us, especially this time of year, there's a real push on for graduation, which often includes dissertation work. And so we get very, very busy on dissertation committees. Okay, so normally during spring break, I've gone through and assigned you points for weeks 1 through 8 of your discussion sections. I'm not finished with that. Okay, but I have noticed that there's some of these questions from some of these works from some of you that are missing. I'll tell you what I'll do. Okay. I will be this week going through and grading those discussion, and it's really participation points. Okay, if you're in, you're in. If you have yet to answer and respond to everybody during the week. If you catch that before I catch the grading, I'll give you the points. Once it's graded, it's done. All right. So and you know, I find that people who take my classes and don't always end up with the grade that they hope for. Frequently, one of the main causes is they didn't participate week by week in the discussion, and although you know it's only 4 questions a week, I mean it's like 16 points, though it adds up. All right. So if you know that you've been less than diligent about answering the questions and engaging with your classmates, get in there and do that. And while we're on the topic, you know, because one of you reached out and contacted me and said, you know, it's really not fair and it's really difficult for me to respond to my classmates when they don't post their answers to their questions. And I'm like, you know, you're right. All right. Don't do that. Don't, you know, not respond or wait till, you know, like 11:55 on Monday night. I mean, come on. Think a little bit further out than that of your own answer and be considerate of your classmates and their necessity to respond to your answers. Okay. All right, everybody. So welcome back from Modular Week Spring Break. This week I've got a group of articles for you to read. We're going to be looking at evangelism in other parts of the world and electronic media and how the two are sometimes used for purposes that maybe they ought not should be used for. Okay. You will continue to wrap up your second presentation, and then you will make sure to look, if you haven't already, at the feedback that I've given you about part 1 for your paper and continue to work on your paper, remembering that when you turn in the final version of that paper, and that will include, you know, this first part, if the score goes up, you know, and only up, whatever the score goes up, I'll change the score on part 1 up to part 2. So if you're not happy with where you're at on part 1 in terms of your score, make the changes that I point out in there. And then when you do, and I see that and then you score higher on part 2, I'll raise that score to be the same. So if you're, you know, somewhere in the 80 percentile, 70, 80 percentile, and that's not doing it for you, get up into the 80, 90 percentile, and I go back and raise that score. Okay, everybody. All right. Have a fantastic week. Remember that I am praying for you. I'm thinking about you. And as always, I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.